There are three stages a man goes through before those three little words ever leave his mouth. And if you understand them, you'll stop guessing, stop stressing, and start seeing what he's really trying to show you long before he ever says it out loud. Men don't arrive at I love you overnight. They move through a silent emotional process, and each stage reveals something deeper about where his heart is leaning, even if he's too guarded, too cautious, or too proud to admit it just yet. The first stage is recognition, and this hits him earlier than most women realize. This is the moment when he sees something in you that he doesn't see in anyone else. It's not about beauty, it's not about perfection, it's not even about chemistry. It's that quiet internal shift where he starts to understand this woman moves me. He may not say anything, he may not act differently on the outside, but inside, that wheel is turning. He pays attention to the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, the way you respect yourself. He notices how he feels when you're around versus when you're not. Before he ever expresses affection, he experiences recognition. He recognizes your value. He recognizes the comfort you bring. He recognizes that something about you stands out. This is the moment his heart makes the first move long before his words ever will. Then comes the second stage, adjustment. This is where he starts changing his behavior without even realizing he's doing it. A man can't hide this stage because the shift shows up in the small things. He becomes more intentional, more consistent, more invested. Even if he never announces it, he starts thinking before he speaks because he cares how his words land on you. He pays attention to what you like, what you don't, what makes you smile, what stresses you out. He begins adjusting his schedule, his habits, his priorities, little by little, to make space for you. This is the stage where he tests himself, not you. He asks, am I ready for this? Can I show up for her? Do I want to? And every time he finds himself choosing you, even in the smallest ways, he moves deeper into the emotional territory he normally avoids. This stage is quiet but powerful. You'll notice him showing effort, even if he tries to play it cool. And then comes the third stage, surrender. This is the moment he stops fighting what he feels. Men don't say, I love you because they feel it. They say it when they finally surrender to it. There's a difference. Feelings hit early, but surrender takes time. Surrender is when he stops trying to control the pace, stops trying to stay guarded, stops pretending he can keep things casual. This is when he lets himself care without fear. He lets himself imagine a future with you without shutting it down. He lets himself be vulnerable in moments when he normally would have pulled away. This stage doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as him letting you see parts of him he doesn't show anybody else. Sometimes it's him trusting you with his stress, his past, his insecurities. Sometimes it's him opening up on a random night when the room is quiet and he finally feels safe enough to admit what his heart has been trying to say. By the time he reaches this stage, those three words aren't a possibility, they're inevitable. Because once a man recognizes your value, adjusts his life to include you, and finally surrenders to what he feels, I love you becomes the only thing left for him to say. Recognition is the very first stage a man goes through before he ever says, I love you. And it's often completely invisible to the outside world. At this point, he is quietly observing, quietly processing, and quietly deciding whether or not you are someone worth investing his heart in. Recognition is not about loud gestures or grand declarations. It is subtle. It begins internally the moment he notices something in you that stands out from everyone else he has met. It could be your confidence, the way you carry yourself, your laugh, the way you treat others, or the way you hold your own standards without compromising yourself. These small details matter far more than appearances or superficial traits. When a man recognizes someone, it is a deep internal acknowledgement that he values not just what he sees on the surface, but the energy, the character, and the essence of who you are. This stage is crucial because it lays the foundation for everything that comes after. He may not even consciously realize that this recognition is happening. He might think he's just enjoying your company, but inside, his mind is taking note of patterns, habits, and qualities that resonate with him on a deeper level. Recognition is also about comparison, not in a negative way, but in an observational way. He starts noticing differences between you and everyone else he has known. He might not articulate it, but he starts creating an internal map of what makes you unique, what makes you irreplaceable, and what makes him feel something he hasn't felt before. This stage is often silent. There are no texts, no hints, no attempts to impress. He is simply registering, storing information, and observing how being around you affects him. He notices how he feels when he's with you versus when he's not, and that emotional contrast begins to build an internal tension. Recognition is also about emotional resonance. He begins to feel a connection to your mind, your spirit, and your energy. He feels drawn to your presence and curious about your thoughts, your opinions, and your perspective on life. Even small actions you take, things you might consider ordinary, catch his attention in ways you don't realize. The way you speak, the way you handle challenges, the way you react to people around you, all of it starts to accumulate in his mind. Recognition is essentially the first acknowledgement that you matter to him on a level deeper than casual interaction. It is the stage where a man begins to attach significance to you, even if he cannot articulate it yet. It is an internal shift from seeing someone as just another person to seeing someone as someone who has the potential to matter in a meaningful way. Recognition is also intertwined with curiosity. He starts asking himself questions without necessarily asking you anything. He wonders what makes you tick, what motivates you, what brings you joy, what scares you, and what dreams you hold. These thoughts may not surface in conversation, but they shape his perception of you and influence his behavior moving forward. The depth of recognition can often determine the speed and intensity of the next stages. The stronger the recognition, the more likely he will move toward adjustment and surrender because he has already created an internal map of your value, your uniqueness, and the potential emotional connection he feels growing with you. Recognition is the seed that starts everything, and without it, there is no foundation for emotional investment, no pathway to vulnerability, and no chance for him to ever reach the point where he can honestly say those three words. Observation is the second stage a man goes through before he ever says, I love you, and it is where recognition begins to transform into understanding. After he notices your unique qualities and feels drawn to you, he enters a period of careful study, watching not just your words, but your actions, reactions, and patterns. Observation is not about judgment or criticism. It is about collecting information to understand whether this connection is worth pursuing and whether you fit into his world in a meaningful way. During this stage, he pays attention to the little things that reveal your personality, how you handle stress, how you treat people around you, how you express joy, frustration, or vulnerability. He notices your consistency and whether your words match your actions. Because for a man to feel secure in opening his heart, he needs to trust that your character is genuine and stable. Observation also involves noticing boundaries. He watches how you enforce your standards, how you respond when his attention or interest fluctuates, and how you maintain your sense of self in situations where others might compromise. These cues tell him a lot about who you are at your core and whether he wants to align himself with someone so self-aware and grounded. During observation, he often tests his own reactions as much as he studies yours. He might see how he feels when you challenge him, when you disagree, or when you assert yourself. He observes his own emotions because a man wants to know if his attraction and connection are real, sustainable, and meaningful. He is constantly asking himself if he is willing to step up, to adjust, and to invest emotionally. Observation is subtle, often invisible, and can lasts longer than any of the other stages because it involves mental and emotional processing. He may not voice his thoughts, but internally, he is analyzing, comparing, and predicting. He notices what energizes him about you and what drains him. Because before he says, I love you, he must understand whether this relationship enhances his life or challenges it in ways he is willing to embrace. He also observes patterns in communication. Does he feel comfortable sharing with you? Do you listen without judgment? Does he sense that he can trust you with his thoughts, feelings, and vulnerabilities? These small interactions tell him whether the foundation for intimacy and honesty exists. Observation is also about timing and patience. He rarely rushes through this stage because it is critical that he feels confident before he fully opens his heart. He weighs moments of connection, noting when he feels joy, when he feels calm, and when he feels energized by your presence. Over time, he begins to form a mental map of the relationship's potential. Observation is not passive. It shapes how he will behave in the next stage. By the end of observation, he has begun testing his comfort level, evaluating your compatibility, and predicting whether deep emotional investment is possible. The more intentional his observation, the more prepared he will be to move toward adjustment, where his behavior will start reflecting the feelings he is processing internally. Observation is the bridge between feeling drawn to someone and being willing to act on those feelings. It is the stage where a man learns who you are, how you operate, and whether his growing attraction is something worth nurturing into love. Adjustment is the third stage a man goes through before he ever says, I love you. And it is where internal recognition and observation begin to translate into outward action. After he has noticed your unique value and studied your personality, habits, and reactions, he starts making subtle changes in his behavior, choices, and priorities. Adjustment is not about pretending to be someone he's not. It's about aligning his life in ways that accommodate and reflect the growing significance of you in his world. He begins to consider how his words, actions, and time affect you, and he intentionally starts shaping his behavior to show care and consistency. This stage is a quiet but powerful indicator that his feelings are deepening because it shows effort without requiring verbal acknowledgement. During adjustment, he starts testing the waters of emotional availability. He may adjust his schedule to spend more time with you, showing up consistently, even when it's inconvenient or requires extra effort. He may notice small habits that irritate or frustrate you and begin to change them not out of fear, but out of respect and consideration. This is a stage of conscious reflection where he evaluates how his actions impact the dynamic between you and begins taking steps to improve the connection. A man at this stage often starts thinking ahead, imagining scenarios where he can support you, protect your feelings, or create moments of happiness. These adjustments are deliberate and calculated, even if subtle, because he is weighing his capacity to invest emotionally and the value he places on this relationship. Adjustment also involves emotional regulation. He begins managing impulses, controlling moods, and responding to situations with thoughtfulness rather than instinct alone. He wants to ensure that when he interacts with you, he is at his best version, and he starts practicing patience, empathy, and understanding in ways that may not have been necessary with others. This is his internal training ground, where he tests whether he can maintain a balanced, considerate presence while still being authentic. A man adjusting for love is not perfect, but he is intentional. He wants to prove through consistent small actions that he can be trusted, that he can contribute to the relationship's stability, and that he is willing to meet your emotional needs even without being asked. At this stage, he also begins prioritizing you in his mind and heart. Your happiness, comfort, and opinions start influencing his decisions, sometimes without him even realizing it. Adjustment is about bridging the gap between desire and action, turning internal feelings into observable patterns of care, reliability, and commitment. He may not yet verbalize his feelings, but every thoughtful gesture, every effort to accommodate your preferences, and every consistent display of attention are his way of signaling that he values you deeply. Adjustment is also a test, both for him and for the relationship, as he gauges how sustainable these changes are over time and whether the emotional investment feels natural rather than forced. Through this process, he starts preparing himself for the vulnerability required to move into surrender, where he will allow himself to feel fully and openly without reservation. Adjustment is the proving ground where intention meets action, where care becomes visible, and where the foundation for love is quietly being built brick by brick, showing that he is ready to move beyond observation and recognition into something much deeper. Testing is the fourth stage a man goes through before he ever says, I love you, and it is one of the most critical and often misunderstood phases of his emotional journey. After recognition, observation, and adjustment, he reaches a point where he needs to evaluate not only you, but also himself and the dynamics between you. Testing is not about manipulation or playing games. It is about assessing compatibility, resilience, and the depth of connection. It is a stage where he examines how well he can show up consistently, how prepared he is to invest emotionally, and whether the relationship aligns with his values and life goals. This stage often happens quietly, behind the scenes, because men tend to process these evaluations internally before expressing any thoughts or feelings aloud. During testing, he starts to observe how you respond to challenges, disagreements, or stressful situations. He watches your reactions when things don't go perfectly and notices your problem-solving approach, your patience, and your emotional stability. These moments reveal your true character, which is essential for him to understand before opening his heart completely. At the same time, he evaluates his own capacity to handle conflict, his ability to remain calm and supportive, and his willingness to compromise without losing himself. Testing is as much about self-reflection as it is about observing you. He is asking himself, often unconsciously, whether he is the kind of man who can contribute positively to this relationship over the long term. Testing also manifests through small, intentional scenarios. He may challenge your opinions gently to see how you assert yourself, or he may step back occasionally to gauge how you respond in his absence. These moments are not meant to create insecurity, but to provide clarity about your mutual emotional resilience. He wants to ensure that the connection is strong enough to withstand natural ups and downs and that both of you can navigate life's challenges together. During this stage, he evaluates compatibility on multiple levels: emotional, mental, and even practical. He observes whether your values align, whether your goals complement each other, and whether there is mutual respect and understanding. Testing often requires patience and subtlety. He may not verbalize his questions or concerns, but internally he is analyzing patterns, outcomes, and emotional responses. Every interaction becomes a piece of data, and every response is a clue. He is looking for authenticity, consistency, and emotional depth, because a man wants to know that the person he invests in is real, reliable, and capable of reciprocating his efforts. Testing also prepares him for the next stage, surrender, by building confidence in the relationship and in his own emotional readiness. It is through this careful evaluation that he ensures his feelings are not impulsive or fleeting, but grounded in a genuine understanding of both himself and the person he is growing attached to. At the heart of testing is a desire for certainty without pressure. He wants to know that he is making the right choice, that the relationship is worth vulnerability, and that his investment will be met with respect, appreciation, and emotional reciprocity. Testing is his way of creating a safe space for both himself and the relationship, allowing him to assess risk, explore boundaries, and ensure that when he finally speaks those three words, they are authentic, deliberate, and unshakable. Surrender is the fifth stage a man goes through before he ever says, I love you. And it is the most vulnerable and transformative phase of his emotional journey. After recognition, observation, adjustment, and testing, he reaches a point where he must let go of his defenses, doubts, and fears to fully allow himself to feel. Surrender is not about weakness, it is about courage. It is the stage where he accepts his emotions, embraces vulnerability, and acknowledges the depth of his attachment without holding back. A man cannot genuinely express love until he has surrendered to it internally. And this stage is where he stops resisting the pull of his own heart and begins to open up completely. During surrender, he begins to let go of the protective walls he has built over time. Men often carry emotional armor shaped by past experiences, disappointments, and societal expectations. Surrender requires him to consciously put that armor down, even if just a little at a time. He allows himself to care without fear of judgment, to trust without doubt, and to prioritize emotional connection over ego. This stage often comes with internal conflict as he grapples with vulnerability and the fear of being hurt. But surrender is his way of choosing connection over self-protection, understanding that love cannot grow where walls remain intact. Surrender is visible in his actions even before words emerge. He becomes more open with his thoughts, sharing insights about his past, his dreams, and his fears in ways he might never have with anyone else. He allows himself to be present in moments of intimacy, whether emotional, intellectual, or physical, without holding back. He starts showing consistency not because he feels obligated, but because he genuinely wants to nurture the bond. He begins to invest his energy, time, and attention fully, understanding that love requires active participation rather than passive feeling. The more he surrenders, the more he demonstrates that his feelings are no longer abstract or tentative. They are real, intentional, and growing stronger. Surrender also involves trust. He begins to trust not only you, but also himself, his judgment, and his capacity to love without losing himself. He understands that being vulnerable does not make him weak, it makes him human. He allows himself to feel deeply, to care passionately, and to experience joy and fear simultaneously. This duality is what makes surrender both exhilarating and challenging. He is no longer measuring his emotions or holding back in anticipation of rejection. He is fully engaged, fully present, and fully committed internally, preparing the ground for eventual verbal expression of love. During this stage, a man also begins to imagine a future with you. Surrender allows him to see the possibilities of shared experiences, mutual growth, and emotional intimacy. He begins to envision how your life and his could intertwine, not as a fleeting thought, but as a real, tangible potential. He may test scenarios in his mind, considering how he would support you, celebrate you, and remain loyal to the bond forming between you. Surrender is his way of emotionally preparing for the leap of faith that love requires. It is the bridge between feeling deeply and expressing those feelings. Without surrender, words alone would be hollow. Surrender is the moment when the heart leads. And when a man reaches this stage, the words, I love you, are no longer a question but an inevitability because he has allowed himself to fully feel, fully trust, and fully invest emotionally. Declaration is the sixth stage a man goes through before he ever says, I love you. And it is the culmination of all the internal processes he has experienced up to this point. After recognition, observation, adjustment, testing, and surrender, he reaches a point where his emotions can no longer remain unspoken, where the depth of his feelings demands expression. Declaration is not a rushed decision or a reaction to external pressure. It is a deliberate, conscious act of communicating what his heart has been processing and nurturing quietly over time. At this stage, he has achieved clarity about his emotions, the relationship, and his readiness to commit, and he finally finds the courage to put his feelings into words. During the declaration stage, a man carefully chooses how and when to express his love. Timing and context matter because he wants to ensure that his words carry weight, sincerity, and impact. He is aware that saying I love you is not just a statement, it is a promise, a reflection of vulnerability, and a signal that he is prepared to be emotionally present and invested. His declaration is informed by everything he has observed and experienced in the previous stages. He has watched your actions, noted your values, and tested his own capacity to handle emotional intimacy. He has surrendered to his feelings and now understands that verbalizing them is the natural next step. Declaration often involves both verbal and nonverbal signals. Even before he speaks the words, you may notice gestures, consistency, and actions that indicate he has reached this stage. He is attentive, reliable, and emotionally available in ways that signal his commitment without needing to announce it immediately. By the time he declares love, his actions already support his words, reinforcing that his feelings are genuine and enduring. This stage is about alignment between emotion and expression, where internal certainty meets external communication. A man in the declaration stage has also processed the risk of vulnerability. He has weighed the possibility of rejection, misunderstanding, or emotional exposure and has decided that the connection is worth it. His courage to speak comes from the confidence built through recognition, observation, adjustment, testing, and surrender. Each stage has prepared him to communicate his emotions honestly, without hesitation or pretense. He has assessed his own intentions and emotional readiness, ensuring that his declaration is authentic, thoughtful, and meaningful. Declaration also marks a shift in the dynamic of the relationship. Once the words are spoken, the relationship moves into a deeper level of intimacy, trust, and emotional bonding. His declaration signals not only his feelings, but also his willingness to be fully present, to invest in the relationship, and to navigate life's challenges alongside you. It is a commitment to emotional transparency, shared experiences, and mutual growth. The declaration stage is therefore both a culmination and a beginning, representing the fulfillment of the internal emotional journey and the start of a new chapter where love is openly acknowledged, felt, and nurtured. By the time a man reaches the declaration stage, he has traversed a complex path of internal recognition, careful observation, conscious adjustment, personal testing, and courageous surrender. Every thought, action, and feeling has led him to this moment where words become the bridge between his heart and yours. The declaration is not impulsive. It is deliberate, informed, and deeply heartfelt, ensuring that when he says, I love you, it is more than just words. It is a promise, a truth, and a reflection of the emotional journey he has taken to arrive at that point.